Hey, it was a great weekend for the Houston Texans, great weekend for CJ Stroud, and great weekend for Houston Texans fans. We had a lot of fun. Whether you feel like the trades were correct and all the whatever nonsense, I'm not worried about that right now. CJ Stroud showed a different side of his personality, and I think a lot of us had come to expect, and we'll get into it. This was probably the most powerful part of the weekend, and one I didn't see until afterwards. But I put Christy Reekin from the Chronicle asking CJ Stroud about how emotional it was on draft night.
You were really emotional in the moments before you were drafted after you knew. Can you kind of take me through that moment and like what you were thinking in that time?
I've been working for so long just to get. I mean, everything that I've been through kind of was just going through my head. Thinking about my dad, wishing he was here. Sitting there with my mom, just realizing what we went through and how she kind of had to play both roles for a long time. And really think about my brothers, my cousins was right there, my old coach, and it's really all them emotions started to hit. Once I got that phone call, and after I hung up the phone, I realized, hey, I'm a Texan, and that just is a blessing.
All right, so that was what got my mom to call in because she doesn't usually really weigh in on much with football at all. So these are the Zoom interviews, and then I'm just a couple of the highlights from the press conference. I know we already watched that, but just the best snippets of it. I'll be honest, and a lot of you guys know, early on I was skeptical of CJ Stroud for a lot of reasons, and I started to come around on CJ Stroud as a leader and as a person as we watched the interview and the pivot and various other things. But I hadn't really seen like this loose and free guy that we're seeing. And I've got a theory about that. I'll save it until the end. But also, John McClain asked him about David Mulugheta. We've got the part in here where CJ had referenced the fact that the Texans hadn't had a franchise quarterback in a while. Everything looks a lot better when you actually see it in person. So this, at the very beginning, was Aaron Wilson asking CJ, and he also asked Will, obviously, just his thoughts about joining the Texans. And he touched a couple of good points here.
Had a great relationship with the coaches already. Me and Coach Stroud Johnson. He already coached me before to lead 11. So I'm just excited to get in that QB room, learn from Bobby, who came from the Shanahan tree. That's something that I definitely think I can fit. I'll definitely be effective, man. I feel like what I bring to the table is just a fierce, tenacious leader that's going to lead by example and be vocal.
Okay, fierce and tenacious. I'm all about that. That's good. The other thing, too, was he had mentioned Gerard Johnson had coached him at the Elite 11 Academy. So Gerard had that experience with him. He mentioned Bobby Slowick. I thought one thing I've noticed about him so far, and this is what a couple people had said, he's very good about learning people's names. I think John Harris actually said that he had met him real briefly, and it wasn't really a big deal or anything. But as CJ Stroud went to leave the room, he turned around and shook everybody's hand and thanked them for being there. Like, both these guys are polite as hell. Not that ultimately matters, except it's nice. He said H-Town. That's good. He's got that down already. These guys are like indoctrinated with the hand sign when they walk in the door. And I think the only other thing is we gotta get Kubshanistan, the phrase Kubshanistan for a Kubiak Shanahan offense, more in the common nomenclature. Nick Caserio himself has said it to me. Various other people from the Texans have. We need to spread it outside the city of Houston now. And then Christy Reekin asked him one other question. It was about his suit. So just real briefly, I didn't figure it'd be as interesting to all of you guys, but here's him talking about his suit.
And just like Will said, man,
and Will answered first about his suit. And at the end, Will had referenced that there was something about his grandmother on the inseam. So I thought it was just really cool that at the very beginning here, CJ caught himself and said this.
Saying condolences for your grandmother, but my suit is I kind of guessed right too. So yeah, I got
talking about the colors.
Got a dark blue, got some little colors going. Had my guy Rick Soto in Austin, Texas, who did it for me. And then my guy in LA, Blue the Great. So he did like the paint job for me. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, and Will had talked about who his designer was too. I got this off the rack at Banana Republic. They designed it for me. So this is Sarge. Sarge had asked CJ and Will, and we're doing just CJ in this one, about Sarge is right here. I'll let Sarge tell you.
Here coming to Houston, knowing that there's going to be a lot of eyes on you, a lot of pressure on you. Are you ready and built for that type of pressure?
Yeah, for sure. I'm battle tested. God has put a lot on my life, man. I think before you get to a moment like this, you got to be humiliated. You got to be humble. Something that I've been through. I've been through a lot of humility, and that's something that I think that is going to keep me grounded. I'm ready to work. I know, and to be honest with you, I don't believe in pressure. I think you either do it or you don't. And to be honest, man, I really think what they got in the locker room is already special. We just need a couple more pieces, and we're gonna take it on. We're gonna make sure that we win a lot of football games.
Okay, so a couple things about that. There was one, so often you hear athletes after a moment in which they get an honor and they say, "I'm humbled," and it never quite makes sense because actually it's the opposite of being humbled. Like people are pumping you up. You want to try to stay humble. The fact that he actually used the word humiliated there, and I don't want to say that's a Freudian slip or anything, but I honestly if to real briefly go over his story for those of you who don't know it. And ESPN, to their credit, backed away from what they had been doing for a few years, which is basically like telling every sordid tale from the kid's family that got up there. But CJ was leading the middle class life, and when he was 12 years old, his father was arrested for a pretty bad crime. And what he thought in his life was just a normal middle class family where his father was a pastor. I ended up with his father going to jail for sentenced to decades. So I mean, like humiliation and what a 12 or 13-year-old feels as you're going through all that, and then having to pick himself up and be supportive for his mom and everything. Like the kid, this isn't the normal 22-year-old kid who's talking about how he's been through some tough stuff and he actually hasn't. Like CJ's been through some tough stuff. And then as far as being humble, had to really earn it at Ohio State as well. I also do like the fact that he referenced the guys on the team already. And that's an important distinction between people who come in and think like, well, I'm going to teach these guys how to win versus a young guy like CJ that is, knows he's going to have to earn respect and all of that. This is John Alexander from the Houston Chronicle.
I'm curious, what do you make of this opportunity for yourself and how are you viewing it? And then I'll ask Will a question after.
I'm viewing this opportunity like it's one of a kind because it is. It's something that God put on my life, and so I know it's for a reason. I know that it's special. I know I'm gonna treat it like my baby. So I know the city of Houston hasn't seen a franchise quarterback in a long time.
Okay, so we'll talk about that.
And that's something that I hope I become.
Okay, so the city of Houston hasn't seen a franchise quarterback in a long time. That got a lot of run, and it's one of those things on Twitter, social media. It looks a lot worse in print. I think especially in the excitement of the moment, when you watch this in context, and that's what I said at the time. And I had seen a snippet of it where he said that, and it always just looks so much worse in isolation. Not that it's the worst thing to say, but this is a guy who's referenced it. He looked up to Deshaun Watson, his playing style and all that. Like this is somebody that's excited in the moment and having a press conference. He's got Will Anderson next to him, and it's felt like a long time. And some of you might not consider Deshaun Watson to have been a franchise quarterback. In my mind, very few of us were objecting to him getting a contract extension when he did it. So that was a franchise quarterback. This wasn't like when various other quarterbacks have gotten contracts and you're like, we'll see. So that was our franchise quarterback, but it feels like an eternity ago. And I feel like in the last 2 years, we've lived like 6 seasons. So I'll allow it, CJ Stroud. This was McClain, I believe. McClain asked the money question. I lost this all somewhere along the way. Remember, one of the big theories was that the Texans wouldn't want to draft CJ Stroud because his agent is David Mulugheta, who is Deshaun Watson's agent, and or David Mulugheta wouldn't want his client to go to the Texans. I thought this was interesting, and take it for what it's worth. Here's the exchange about John McClain asking about David Mulugheta.
Yeah, I definitely think I can become a franchise quarterback, but today,
first he's talking about being a franchise quarterback.
Right now, I got to put in the work. I'm a rookie. I got to build trust in the locker room, be a great teammate, treat my linemen well, my running backs, my tight ends, my receivers, everybody, specialists, the defense, everybody, man. So I know I gotta work my way up.
Oh yeah, that part. He checked off a lot of boxes and ticks in terms of the non-Will Levis. Purportedly, I feel bad for that kid now. Supposedly, purportedly, allegedly, a better leadership vibe than Will Levis.
And CJ, what is your agent, David Mulugheta, told you about the Texans?
Man, he's told me a lot of great things. He told me that Nick Cassera is a great GM. The McNairs are great ownership, and thank you to them for giving us this opportunity. So he's had a lot of positive things to say, and I'm really excited to get to work. And, man, I'm super excited to be a Texan.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was prepped for that. I'm guessing he was. I mean, like, obviously, you run the risk if you're prepping these kids that they start to sound programmed. And I do think, honestly, there was so much on this kid from the end of the playoffs till now that I feel a lot of it. To me, it looked like a weight was off his shoulders. He actually addresses that in a minute. I know that on the surface of it all, I think Mulugheta and Caserio, they worked great together. You know, like, it's fun. I mean, hate it, love it, agree with it, whatever. I mean, Caserio was put into a position where, you know, maybe at the beginning there might have been some question about whether or not Deshaun was going to come back. But once the allegations went down a certain road, that was it. So I think those two, through probably what was a pretty tense and contentious environment, figured out a way to get maximum dollars for Deshaun Watson compared to, I mean, once the trade mechanics were put into effect, think about this. Aaron Rodgers was allowed to speak to the Jets before the Packers had actually agreed to a trade with the Jets. And that ended up really making it a pain in the butt. By the time the Texans and other teams were ready to talk about Deshaun Watson, the Texans vetted all those deals before Mulugheta and Deshaun Watson were allowed to talk to those teams. So what it did is it created more of a genuine fake free agency, because those teams were all ready to go. They didn't have to worry about anything, you know, similar to when maybe Lamar Jackson's deal would have gone faster if they had something like that. That's a whole different beast. Congratulations, by the way, Lamar Jackson. I'm just about ready to concede that I was wrong on you needing an agent. So, but there's like one little hanging chad that's keeping me. I was wrong on a lot of stuff this weekend. So, as far as the McNairs go, you know, Cal McNair, one of his sayings that he's used a few times is that he doesn't like to look in the rearview mirror. He likes to move forward and let bygones be bygones. Like anybody that knows Cal McNair, no matter what people try to peddle about him, you know, in public or by people who've never met him, like Cal is a very forgiving person. So that's what there is about that. When it came to, Omar Ruiz from NFL Network at the end asked what was the, because of, was all the speculation, the rumors, all of that, was his emotion that he displayed at the draft, was it because it was like a release of all those, from all that speculation?
I had a feeling this morning when I woke up, I was like,
No, actually, first he said he had a feeling about, did he know where he was going when he woke up this morning?
man, I'm going to the Texans for sure. I just had a feeling, man. I'm really blessed to have it come true.
Yeah. That was interesting because you wonder, I guess I cut off the part about the speculation part. You always wonder, like, okay, how much do these guys know? Are they hiding it or whatnot? The Texans kept it quiet from CJ Stroud. I mean, like, obviously, I think they wanted there to be that intrigue with their plans to trade. So people kept questioning exactly why they would keep it a secret or for what reason. For one, you know, the timeline on when they settled on taking CJ Stroud when they did seems to have come later than it might for a lot of teams. Then two, obviously, there was the strategy that they employed to get both those guys. We're not going to get into the debate about value or anything, but you draft CJ Stroud first because then the price for that third pick overall likely becomes a lot less. So the Texans were able to trade up, and you know, if they'd done it, if CJ Stroud were still out there, it probably would have been impossible to trade up for him. There was still. I'm not going to get into that whole debate about everything else. So this is CJ at the opening press conference. This is pretty far into it, but this is when he really started to loosen up these last few exchanges. But this is where he's describing what type of a leader he wants to be as a quarterback.
Not only vocal, but lead by example. And that's something that I think I bring to the table very well, coming from a place like Ohio State where the quarterback is really, other than LeBron, like you're right under LeBron. So like you're kind of, you're the leader of the whole state. So I feel like I got good practice there.
Yeah, so like that was the first time, and there's a little bit a little bit later, but where he like really started to loosen up and enjoy himself. I have a theory. This is my theory. It's that DeMeco Ryans has this effect on people because what have we seen out of Nick? Nick is like cracking jokes on stage. Nick is as loose as he's ever been. He's got his feet up on the table on draft night, and all that started when they hired D'Amico Ryans. Now it makes sense that I think the hiring of D'Amico Ryans kind of signaled that the quasi tank was over. But D'Amico does have that effect on you. Like, he had that effect on me. I was taking ephedrine all the time back then. No, actually, it had been banned by the time D'Amico got there. Kids, stay off the ephedrine. Like, I don't think he used to be able to buy. It's basically legal speed that you could buy at the gas station. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. I had no idea why it was legal. It was very, very dangerous for a young Seth Payne, and it wasn't as bad as speed. I would never do speed. As far as the rest of it goes, though, I think like D'Amico has no pretense or BS about him, and I think that does just make people feel comfortable to open up and let their true personalities show.
And every time we're out there, man, we're jokes, we're laughing, we're cracking.
So he's talking about being with Bryce Young out in California and their friendship, their buddies.
And jokes on each other, having fun. He always says I need to clip my nails, so I've actually gone to get my Medicare a couple times now because he be clowning.
I'll tell you one thing, Bryce Young, you can keep your tiny, delicate hands away from my franchise quarterback. Okay?
We actually
just watch it.
We play basketball together every weekend while we were back home, and even then, like our trainer usually comes with us. He makes sure we don't guard each other because we probably gonna like foul the heck out with each other. We just
this is where somebody. I think maybe we need to see if Bryce can take a charge. Can he stand in there and take a charge? I don't know.
Play really hard, so.
Yeah. As Maserati Swift says, D'Amico will not tolerate BS. Yeah, and it's interesting too because it's like he's got standards. He's talked about that. I'll show you guys some clips at some point from back in San Francisco that are really, really good display of how he gets the toughest possible badass play out of people, but by being kind of like a gentle warrior monk type. This is when. Oh, Brandon Scott asked about how much the game against Georgia proved that he could run, that he had mobility. D'Amico started off by kind of downplaying that and saying that it was like a stamp of approval, but they'd seen it enough already that they felt he had that to his game.
Playing out of Ohio State, you have great receivers that are usually always open. So I feel like I'm very, very strategic and very.
Okay, I was told by angry Ohio State fans and threatened physically online that I was not to say that Ohio State receivers are always open because CJ was throwing them open and because he was always throwing into tight windows. So it's weird to hear CJ Stroud say that his receivers were always open. But God forbid you tell an Ohio State fan that his receivers also don't get open that often.
My reads, which my receivers love, my running backs love it because they can get out, and I think I do a great job with my IQ, picking up protections and things like that. So.
Okay, and that was another part, and I'm glad he talked about that, about his receivers, his running backs, his tight ends, loving that he knows how to go through his progressions, that he's careful about that. That part of being a pocket passer is important, not just because like that's the best way to play football, but like having that, if you want to talk about your quarterback being a point guard, who do basketball players love? A point guard that can just get them the ball, and get them their shots. So I talked to Ryan Fitzpatrick about this. Sean and I did once, and it was really interesting that there was an element to Ryan Fitzpatrick's game where he was a gunslinger, like to his detriment. CJ doesn't need to be that much of a gunslinger, but guys loved him. It wasn't Ryan telling us this, we were discussing it. I told Ryan this. Somebody else had told me this about Ryan. Anyway, that like guys loved him because they always felt like they were going to get their opportunities, and CJ, and being a guy that really wants to be sure he spreads the ball out before he pulls it down and runs. That's the nice attitude to have. Like, I don't think he's going to be scared to run it, obviously, but he's not looking to run first, which is a huge obstacle that a lot of young quarterbacks have to face. So maybe he gets drafted number 2 overall instead of number 1 overall because he didn't improvise enough in college, and the Texans end up being the beneficiary of it.
Oh, yeah.
So this is, let's see. Oh, how exciting it is to be part of a rebuild. He said one thing in here that I thought was very mature.
We'll hit it on the nail, man. What we want to do, man, we just want to start from the ground up. Everything that we're going to get is not going to be just given. It's going to be earned. So we want to put our head down, work, make sure that we grind, and that we show dudes that, man, we're willing to listen before we talk. and we want to definitely be, of course, a big stature into this rebuild. Which I wouldn't even say that because I mean, you look at what this team, you see a lot of guys who fight their tails off every game, and I watched all last season, man. So
Yeah, so I was intrigued by that 'cause he said he watched all last season. So I wonder if he started watching Texans film as he felt like there was a chance that he might go there, which would be nice because at least then David Mulugheta didn't get a sense like that they were out because he was a Mulugheta client or anything. But or was he watching? I'm guessing it was in this preparation period trying to learn the Kupchanistani offense. So that was cool. But the thing that he said was listen before we speak. And, obviously, like you hear that from coaches all the time. But I think he's mentioned multiple times this weekend having deference to the older guys on the team, to the guys who are already here, to the coaches. Like it's just he's a conscientious young guy. And I think too, it's funny. Like we've talked about how it's all of a sudden a bad thing that he didn't run enough. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, it was a bad thing if guys were running as quarterbacks. You wanted to be too careful to running quarterback. So I think also now there's times where with CJ Stroud, and I'm guilty of this, he's almost judged harshly for being an earnest young man, like for taking his job seriously, almost for not being like electric enough of a personality, when in fact, you don't want an electric personality, like not over the top. You want somebody who's smooth and steady, and you can show the electric side of him in his TV commercials
on the stage.
Okay, so this is what we'll finish on because this is some of the best, like 3 little snippets from the end where he got very, very loose here, and it was really cool.
Man, see some of my friends, and I'm just like, man,
Oh, so he's talking about what it was like in the mayhem of the moment.
I just
when he got drafted.
Got picked, so I do the interview. I'm walking down. I go say what's up to the Texans fans, and they said I was the only one to do that, to go down. So that was kind of cool. And then I look up, and it's like the pick is in, but it says the Texans. I'm like,
I would have asked, Will, would you care to mention why you didn't go talk to the fans? Apparently,
like I just got picked. Like that can't be true. And I'm like, nah, they just traded, and I'm like, oh, should they finna get Will? And so like, I had like the biggest smile on my face. So man, I was super stoked. Like me and Will, we've known each other since high school. We played against each other All-American Bowl. He couldn't sack me back then, so we'll see if he can now. So man, shout out to Nick. You did a great job. Yeah. Nobody been asking Nick questions, man.
Just play well, man. That's all.
It's funny too because like these guys wouldn't realize that Nick does like a 45-minute press conference every night, and CJ just thought poor Nick was getting neglected.
Play well.
Yeah, y'all got to show Nick some love, man. He the one who made it shake. So
they've heard enough from me for a long time. They just want to hear from you.
I'm gonna steal that phrase used with the kids to. He's the one who made that shake. Okay, I'm gonna use that in front of my child to mortify.
We're gonna give you your flowers for sure. And I'm sitting next to 4 great men. I mean 3, excuse me. And
You can put yourself in there. It's okay.
All right, cool. I add it. All right, cool.
All right, so I think that it was a fun weekend, man. And we'll dice up all the other guys as the week goes along. Listen to Payne and Prendergast at 6 a.m. in the morning. Tomorrow morning, Sean's got everything all diced out. I'm excited about a few of the players for sure. And I got to dig into some of the guys, the last couple of guys they took yesterday. I was at a surprise party. Sean and I both were. Neither of us got surprised. So there's one comment on here. His humble attitude will turn into confidence as the season goes on. I don't think he lacks for confidence. I think you know what, Rick, I'm curious about that. Like, I don't think of humility as a lack of confidence. Am I alone in that? Like, I feel you can be extremely confident, but also humble if you're not. And you know where a lot of that springs from is just having goals, and having, expectations that involve a team and a common goal with everybody else. So if you are in it for the team and in it not just for your own glorification, but for everybody else, I feel like you can stay very humble and yet be extremely confident in your ability to do it. I feel like a lot of Dom Capers was like that, incredibly humble, but very, very confident. I actually had some conversations with Dom in private where he just basically put it. He basically he had some brass ones. Okay, like he was not afraid to, like he had a good confidence about himself. You can throw 2022 games in the trash. Lots of turnaround since then. No joking. I like his commitment. Yeah, I think everybody is pretty happy with everything. I feel we have some closure. We can get our respect back in the NFL. And let's finish with this. Let's see. Don't do air guitar. Yeah. Don't do this. The slime. God, please don't do this slime. Oh, so tired of the slime, especially when the team was bad, because then everybody was doing, all the opponents were doing the slime, and I wasn't crazy about it to begin with, and it's not like I'm a prude or anything. You guys know that. You complain to me all the time when I make a joke at 7 a.m. and your kids are in the car, but there was just something just about the slime, and then other teams doing it as you're winning 4 games. Let's see. I have seen him run more often, but he often looks just to throw it. His Ohio State wide receivers are not always. I know, Mr. Robot. My God. Can we stop this? Can we stop? I'm all in on CJ Stroud, man. I am all in on CJ Stroud. Okay? Nobody is claiming or thinks that all he did was throw to receivers who had nobody within 10 yards of him. Okay, Mr. Robot? It's just a matter of frequency. In evaluating one guy versus another, Anthony Richardson and Will Levis didn't have wide open guys or receivers who were open and consistently even caught the ball as often as CJ Stroud did. But I think CJ Stroud is better than both those guys. My God. Are you a Sith? You only deal in absolutes. Only a Sith deals in only absolutes, Mr. Robot. I can't have this. I can't have it anymore, Mr. Robot. I can't have this Buckeye mentality. This is why you guys can't win big. This is why you can't go all the way. This is why you can't beat Michigan. My God. Good day, everybody.